right,
great.
what's next on your sheet?
You are an insane charter of music. When was it that you realized that that was something that you could like commercially sell? And when did Zildjian and VIcFirh come along to ask you to do it?
Yeah, so I even up through like I took private lessons. I could read a little bit of music, but by the time I started taking private lessons when I was like 14, my playing was way ahead of my reading. So that followed me into college. Like when I got to college, people were like sight reading circles around me. I could like barely read. I couldn't read music and like I couldn't read drum notation in real time. And I could barely like it would take me forever to figure out like two measures of just like basic groove. I just wasn't good at reading, and I'd kind of relied on my ear to get me through almost every situation. And it kind of started to haunt me in college because I was starting to realize that like if you want to play a gig and have play 40 songs and learn those 40 songs in like 2 days, you can't do it by ear, or I can't. So it was starting to be apparent to me that like whether it's just charting or it's like reading formal drum notation, I just wasn't doing a good enough job if I wanted to get where I wanted to go. And then on top of that, I was starting to get to a point halfway through college where I was studying drummers like Calvin Rogers, where I loved his playing, but there really weren't the like YouTube lessons that everyone was breaking down every Phillies at like, if so I was just not he was playing a bunch of stuff I wanted to know what he was playing, but no one was really breaking it down. So I was just like, all right, I'm gonna try and figure it out. So at that point, to get a measure of drumming transcribed would literally take me hours. Like it would take me 2 hours to get together like a measure of his drumming. And then I'd play it back in Finale, because at that point I still wasn't great at reading. So I would hit play in Finale and it would play it back and I'd be like, oh shit, that is not right. Like, why isn't it right? Like, what's going on? So it was like, that would have been 2011 is where I really started to be like, okay, man, I want to figure out how to get better at transcribing. So in college, I started transcribing more. And then after I graduated, I, when I was on tour, I would always have something I was transcribing, because I'd be like, man, that was a really cool solo. I just want to transcribe it. So I started putting it on my website, which at the time, literally no one was going to, but I was just like, I don't know. I liked knowing what this was, so I'm sure someone might too. And like over the years, I would be on the road and transcribing stuff and just always kind of like chipping away at something. And then after a while, people would just start reaching out being like, hey, I saw you had a transcription of this. Like, have you ever transcribed this thing? And I'd be like, oh, no. And then eventually I realized like, wait, I haven't, but like I could.
Yeah.
And this person could pay me for it. So, I don't know. It was a couple years after I graduated. So like probably around 2014 or so where I started like charging people. Ash Sohn was one of the first people. He had me transcribe his like play alongs he was doing at the time. And I charged him almost nothing, because I was essentially like, I don't know what to charge for this. Like,
Yeah.
and at the time I was touring, so I was either like doing it in the back of a bus, or I was doing it on my days off when I was just sitting at home. So I was like, man, I don't know, I got nothing else to do. Like, if this random person on the internet wants to pay me $25 to do it, like, sure, I'll do it. And then as time went on, like more and more people were doing it, and I was putting out more of it, and people were finding it and being like, can you transcribe this? So all the while I was a VIcFirh artist, and at some point I reached out to VIcFirh and I was just like, hey, I have all these transcriptions I've done over the years. If you guys ever want it, let me know. And they were kind of like, that's cool, like, good to know, great. And then years went on, and like every now and then I would do a transcription of one of their artists, and I'd send it and be like, hey, I just did this transcription, just wanted you to know, like, I don't know if you guys could use it for anything. And they'd be like, that's really cool, I don't think we need it, but thanks for reaching out. And then eventually the VF Jams project came up, and they were like, hey, I thought about you because I know you transcribe and you put some stuff out and we've seen it and it's awesome, and we have this project and maybe we can transcribe some of them. So, you know, I think the whole thing is a good example of like, there was no one in college. I was studying to be a professional musician, and there was 0 people in college that ever mentioned that you could get paid to transcribe stuff. Because it's just not really a thing that many people did, and it's very, very specific. I only transcribe drum stuff. So, you know, I think that that really taught me that, like, you know, if you can find an audience for something, you can get them to pay you for it. And, you know, it was just a very slow process to figure out how much to charge, like when to charge, and, you know, I don't, yeah. And now I've worked with so many drummers that I never would have guessed because of just kind of keeping doing it. And yeah.